Hi there, welcome to the latest episode of my 10-minute moan. And the topic of this 10-minute moan is quite a disturbing incident that's happened in a rape crisis centre in Edinburgh and an employment tribunal which found in favour of the sacked employee who was apparently sacked because of their gender views. And the CEO of the rape centre, who is a trans woman, who was born a man, sacked her because the views weren't aligned with hers. And this is quite a worrying situation that I've got a little bit of experience with. I worked in London for a while as a sales director for a industrial cleaning company, and I came into contact with people in rape centres and places for women running from dangerous relationships, etc. And I've got a wee bit of insight how the protocols are in place for these women to protect them who are going through quite an emotional time. And I find this one really bizarre, to be honest with you, and I'll explain more once I read the story. Now, the story is ran by the Daily Express this morning, and the headline is Edinburgh Rape Centre Boss Carried Out Hearsay Hunt Against Gender Critical Employee. I'll try and pronounce this name correctly. Miradul Wadawa, who identifies as a woman despite being born a man, was instrumental in the investigation into Roz Adams, according to an employment judge. The chief executive of Edinburgh's Rape Crisis Centre was responsible for hearsay hunt against a worker because of her gender critical beliefs, it has been found. Miradul Wadawa was heavily criticised in the employment tribunal decision after Roz Adams won her claim of constructive dismissal. Wadawa, who identifies as a woman but was born a man, emerged as a key figure in the Kafkaesque investigation into Ms Adams' opinions. Employment Judge Ian McFatridge stated Wadawa and other staff wanted to make life unpleasant for Ms Adams because they disapproved of her views. The report also references a speech Wadawa gave at Edinburgh University, which included considerable cursing from Wadawa and a lot of mentions of TERFs and transphobes in a disparaging way. She also stated the best way to get staff on board with inclusion was to fire them. The tribunal concluded Ms Adams had been harassed and discriminated against by bosses at Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre, which is funded by the Scottish Government. It found that when Ms Adams joined the centre, she was supportive of its trans-inclusive policies, but became uneasy after a discussion with Green MSP Maggie Chapman, who told her trans women are women. The tribunal noted Ms Adams felt concerned that there was no real definition for clarification associated with this statement. It added she felt it was odd. Once she started work, she felt it became more and more apparent that there were issues regarding the way that gender issues were dealt with in the organisation. She felt there were obvious places where the organisation needed to talk about it, but felt that support workers were not permitted to talk about it. She described things around the issue as being eggshelly. The dispute intensified when she raised a case of a rape victim who asked if her counsellor would be a man or a woman. This is a bit that I'm going to talk about at the end through personal experiences. Adams told colleagues she would feel uncomfortable talking to a man, which prompted complaints. The investigation into Miss Adams was somewhat reminiscent of the work of Franz Kafka, according to Mr. McFatridge, and was clearly motivated by a strong belief among senior management and some of the claimant's colleagues that the claimant's views were inherently hateful. Ms Adams, who now works at a rape support centre set up by J.K. Rowling, said it was a victory for all people who have been subjected to sexual violence who need a choice of worker and group support on a basis of sex in order to feel safe, and validates and makes worthwhile 3 years of struggle. She added, I hope the Scottish Government charity regulator, OSCR, Rape Crisis Scotland, and all those in the sector feel emboldened by this judgment to safeguard this important choice for survivors as part of ensuring services are welcome. Rape Crisis Scotland has commissioned an independent review into practices and procedures at the Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre. A statement from Edinburgh Rape Crisis Centre's Board of Directors said it was saddened by the outcome of the tribunal and they would take time to reflect on the written judgment. It added, we strive to provide a safe, accessible and inclusive service and are committed to improving continuously. We are fully supportive of Rape Crisis Scotland's commissioning of an independent review of ERCC practice. This will help ensure our practices and procedures meet the highest standards as set out in the Rape Crisis National Service Standards, and that survivors receive the exceptional quality of support they deserve. We want to reassure all survivors who are currently accessing the service and anyone seeking support that we are still here for you and you matter to us. Our services remain unaffected by these events. That blows my head. And the reason it blows my head was back 2008-ish, and about that time, as I said, I was working in London for an industrial cleaning company. And when we brought new customers on board, a lot of them were public sector, councils, that sort of thing. And I came into contact with a group who dealt with rape and dealt with women escaping abusive relationships. And during the sort of early discussions with these people, we were aware of some of the, issues that they had to deal with and things that we had to be aware of, so that when we were especially on their property, we staffed it properly and we knew all their protocols. And I remember one instance, and it was pretty frightening for me, and even more frightening for the women concerned. I was taken in to look at a job, and I reported to the duty manager, went into the office, was told about the situation, and I was getting taken to the area in the building. I think I remember it was a kitchen area to have a look at what was required. And I got told to stay in the room a second just to declare the area to make sure there was no women in there who would be scared of a man's presence. Now, I was aware of this previously because on certain jobs, depending on where they were in the buildings, we had to send female-only teams to clean them. So the staff went down towards the area just to make sure I was not going to come into contact or just walk past any open doors with women or maybe in a room that had issues with even looking at a man. And they came back a few minutes later and said, yeah, we're safe to go. And as I was taken down the corridor, I remember this quite a long corridor with loads of rooms off it, and we were going to the door at the bottom of the corridor. This woman came out one room to go into another room and screamed and went into a real state of panic and fear because I was in the corridor evidently as a male, and it caused her. I mean, I got a bit of a fright because I didn't know what was going on, but nowhere near the reaction it got from her. And I was ushered out quickly, and the area was secured, and the woman was given the care that she needed and the support she needed. And that led to quite a serious breach for that centre. And what transpired was the women, when they went through to check, I believe there was other women in the same place that were asked to stay in the room with the door shut because there was a man going to just be walking the length of the corridor. I think that's how the situation was dealt with. She wasn't in her room, and I don't know if she was in a kitchen or at the toilet or wherever, but she wasn't aware that I was going to be coming down this corridor. And it was a wee bit of a lapse for the centre, and this woman was really, really distressed about it. So, speaking to the people who ran this thing, I was aware that a lot of women in certain situations, they just cannot actually cope with that. So I think women in a rape crisis centre would have good reason to, at some points, and some of them want to know who was dealing with them, who was in the centre, etc. And when you've got a CEO of one of these centres who is a man who's transitioned to a woman, and if your definition is not the same as Chapman, where a trans woman is a woman, if you were, probably the majority of the people out there would see there's a difference between a trans woman and a woman. then if you were in this centre, you could probably understand why it would concern you if you had to be in contact with, in your eyes, and in my eyes, a man who is transgender to be a woman. And I just find this incredible that anybody would put their personal beliefs, as in this woman who's a CEO who was born a man, and feel that her feelings and thoughts are more important than the women in the centre who need the support. And this goes back to something that I've been saying for months now. People in minorities, and let's say transgender people are, quite a very, very small minority in the grand scheme of things. They do deserve their rights to be looked after, and where we can look after their rights and their feelings and all this stuff, then if society can do it, they do it. But I keep saying this for months, and this is a fantastic example of it. When looking after your rights are at the detriment of other people's rights and a bigger group of people's rights, we kind of have a problem. And if this woman is intelligent enough, this trans woman is intelligent enough to get a job as a CEO of a rape crisis centre, why does she need to come work in a rape crisis centre? Do we not consider that by putting her in that situation to make her happy, right, is potentially affecting far more people than her? And how delicate a situation is this? It just beggars belief how she ended up in this situation in the first place. And now that she's in that situation where she's trying to indoctrinate people to have the same set of beliefs as her, him, however you want to describe Ms. Wadawa, it actually beggars belief to me. And I'm trying to scan down the story when we find the bit, a speech in Edinburgh University, where she said a lot of mentions of TERFs and cussing and about transphobes in a disparaging way, and that the best way to get staff on board with exclusion policy was to fire them. That it just actually scares the life out of me. You just think, how did we end up here? How did we end up here from an issue that in true figures affects less than half of 1% of the population? That we have this person in the powerful position in this very, very delicate organisation who wants everybody working in that organisation to bend to her way of thinking. And if not, she'll badmouth them, cuss them, call them TERFs, and make statements that the best way to deal with them is fire them. That's not inclusion. That's a complete opposite from inclusion. We want this whole organisation to be of one simple way of thinking on quite a delicate situation. And when you factor in that the organisation is dealing with rape victims, it just beggars belief. This place doesn't need an independent investigation. It needs a total wipeout of people in there that are putting their own selfish beliefs in front of the victims that they're meant to support. This isn't the Scotland that I want to be in. This is far from the Scotland that I want to be in. This is an absolutely despicable situation. And do you know why? Because a person named Maggie Chapman, who says a transgender woman is a woman, we let people like that involved in the decision-making processes in our country. And this is where it leads to. And if anybody wants to prove me wrong, give me a phone, we'll sit down, we'll debate it, we'll stick the cameras on, and we'll make a podcast, because I'm fed up with this. This is ridiculous. And this is one of the craziest examples of this wokeness on the subject of transgender that I've ever seen. And it needs to stop. If you enjoyed the video, I doubt you have, but if you enjoyed the, what it was discussing, give it a thumbs up, please. If you've not already done so, please consider subscribing. And unless you're any of these lunatics that want to put men in a rape crisis centre. Unless you're these people, everybody else have a great day. Cheery bye now.